Gordon's computer. Welcome everyone. I'm Jen Polk from Beyond the Craft Story, and I'm really pleased to be here with you this Saturday morning, late morning for me, to be hosting Josh Nathan. He's going to talk about op-ed writing for academics, but not only for academics. This is a co-presentation. It's organized by CMCS, the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies, and we're partnering with them to do that. So I'm really happy about that. Let me say 10 seconds about Beyond Prof. If you want to learn more, it's beyondprof.com. That's Beyond the Professoriate. And we're a community of resources, support, video library, strategy sessions for graduate students and PhDs wanting to launch a successful non-academic job search. Josh.
Okay. Well, first, I'll say it's a little cool here, so I brought a hat. I really don't know if it's me, but I have to get your attention some way in some shape or form, and you know, probably not me. It's a little furry and it's a little itchy, and it probably not my best color, but I again have to get your attention, and in op-eds you have to get people's attention, and op-eds are simply a different hat that we choose to wear. And what are some of the different hats that we wear? We all wear many different hats in our professional and our personal lives, but this is the first time we're actually meeting and we're seeing each other and communicating. So I'll do a quick introduction about myself. My name, as Jennifer Polk said, is Josh Nathan, and I originally started out as a meteorologist and a reporter for television stations for about 10 years, for mostly NBC and CBS affiliates, and then moved into a communication professor for the last 10 years. But I'm also a writer and an editor, and I also do some consulting for human resource development. That's really my area of expertise and what I'm researching. And we could talk about research all day long, but that's really not what we're here for. We're here to talk about how to translate research or translate anything into an op-ed. So I'm going to move to a PowerPoint where we'll start, and I will share that with you now, and hopefully you are seeing that PowerPoint. It has a little bit about what I do. It has 2 of the books I've written. I'm not listing journal articles. We can talk about that later. This is about bridging gaps between academics and the media, which is really anyone in the media who wants to become an expert and become part of the mainstream conversation. This is sponsored by the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies, and it's an extension of our earlier conference, of which I was co-chair in New York, Bridging Gaps, Where is the Critic in Television Journalism, at CUNY Graduate School of Journalism, also sponsored by Beyond the Professoriate, Jennifer Polk, and of course, Waterhill Publishing. So moving on, and you can follow CMCS with the hashtag CMCS17. Discussion agenda: what is an op-ed? We'll start at the very beginning. What do you need for a successful op-ed? And we'll have time for questions and hopefully good answers. But for a successful op-ed, you do need to position yourself as a reliable expert. That involves self-branding. We'll talk about that in a minute. You need to understand that no from a newsroom doesn't necessarily mean never. And when you send pitches and work your social media network, you need to realize journalists are doing those similar things too. They're spending 4 hours a day on social media. So if you're on social media, chances are you'll catch them at some point in time. And that allows you to follow the trends as well as timing for people you might want to send your op-ed to. In other words, if there's a tweet that says, I'm taking the day off there's a personal emergency. That's not the time to send the journalist your pitch letter. Not the time. If you're following the news and there's a breaking emergency story, hurricanes, not the time to send your pitch for an op-ed. So following the trends, looking at the timing will help position yourself much better. You want to align yourself with like-minded writers. That's kind of the opposite. Research, we want to follow the people that we are looking into and that is within our research areas. So it's like-minded but different perspectives. For op-eds, you want to follow people who will understand, appreciate your perspective and your message, and use your social media to post quotes from your research or what you're writing about to test the waters on interest. I like this quote about what an op-ed is and what it isn't from Trish Hall in the New York Times. We are especially interested in finding points of view that are different from those expressed in the New York Times editorials. In other words, we already have those points of view. We're looking for something new. That's what you bring to the table. Often, action-oriented issues spawn wonderful op-eds. They're issues of diversity and social justice, especially in the celebrity culture community right now. But I really love the cartoon that's going to pop up in just a minute because it says everything about what your op-ed has to be. It has to be different. It has to get attention. If you're talking about the problems with cyber attacks, hopefully you add more than there's a bug in the system. It's the designer, not the user. Hopefully you're adding something more like the bug is crawling out from the screen. That's a different perspective, and that will get attention and that will help. So what is an op-ed? It's a persuasive piece of writing that offers a specific opinion, supported by facts and research, but with your opinion in it, hence op-ed, opinion, editorial, 200 to 800 words. That makes a literature review look like a monstrosity. 200 to 800 words, that's nothing. Keys. Okay, one thing you really need to do, and I tried to do it in the beginning with the hat, is you want to whip your attention getters into shape or you'll lose your audience. So I think you'll be able to hear this. I'm using my phone and I'll put it next to the microphone. Perfect. Inspirational. Just to make yourself a little more well-known and to get that attention getter or lose your audience quickly. Academic jargon, not helpful. If you have a phrase or a title, hegemony promotes structural imperialism, you need more work. Take that out. Nobody knows what that means except those in a specific academic community, and that doesn't help you for an op-ed. It certainly doesn't help the journalist who's going to have to probably look up some of those words, terms, strategies, and ideas. Remember, you're catering to your audience. What does your audience look like? What kind of phrases do they use? What kind of stories do they run? If you're interested in celebrity culture, look at areas and publications that focus on celebrity culture. If you're interested on the Transportation Security Administration and why it's come out from the doldrums of 2016 to a more efficient machine, maybe the Washington Post is your bread and butter. Cater to that audience. 2 E's, experience and expertise. They really do matter, and you need to build them, and that's part of self-branding. Building your expertise is not only in what you do, but in where you're seen. For example, I was quoted by Reader's Digest a few years ago across 5 continents and 8 languages about how to set realistic and achieve those realistic goals. At the same time, I was also quoted last year about the TSA's problem in the United States Denver International Airport by the Washington Post. It was the slow wheel clogging the system, and they wanted to know why. Christopher Elliott picked up that quote from me on his LinkedIn page. You might look at him, and he calls himself an author, a consumer advocate, as well as a columnist, which is mainly what he does for USA Today, the Washington Post, Money Magazine. But notice that he wears many different hats, and one of them he considers an advocate. Been quoted by Quicken Loans about Small Business Saturday and the importance of it, and positioned by the Career Resource Institute about LinkedIn best practices and tips. You need to think, I'm building expertise and credibility and trustworthiness through these venues, but at the same time, they're building trustworthiness and credibility with the public through me. So it goes back and forth. And in this area of experience and expertise, they really do matter. Facebook, I'm sorry to say, has lost a few people because journalists are questioning what is credible there after what has happened in the US election with Facebook over the last year and a half. Initially, in your op-eds, go with 80% facts and 20% opinion. You might be able to build in a little bit more opinion as you go along, but initially, about 20% opinion, and don't show all sides of the issue. Harry Truman, US president, once said, you know, I love it, but I also hate it when people say, on the one hand, there's this, but on the other hand, there's that. Pick a side, go with it. That's your op-ed. Remember, again, you're catering to your audience. We'll get to the difference between a columnist and a piece that's an op-ed, but you're not a columnist. They're not looking for you every day, every morning, all the time. Writing style. You're not performing for the readers like a columnist. You're the specialist informing them, which I think is fantastic. That's what your expertise is in, informing people about your area of research. Avoid the passive voice. You want to project confidence in what you write. This cannot be understated. Edit. Edit. Then edit 100 more times. What helps me is having the computer read back what I've written. I listen, I make changes, I re-listen, make changes, re-listen, make changes. About 100 times, and then I have my rough draft. Big no. Don't misspell names. Nothing is worse than a rejection because it hurts your credibility and trustworthiness. You don't want to misspell the name of a hometown, and you don't want to misspell the name of somebody famous or somebody who people don't know, but maybe you interviewed for a piece. Because guess what? They're reading that piece, and if you misspell their name, they're going to think, boy, I spent that time with that person, and look at what happened. That was not worthy of my time. And they may go to the publication. Short sentences make for short paragraphs, and that makes for good op-ed writing, not War and Peace. Send out query letters. We'll talk about that in a few more minutes. Allow time prior to following up, but prior to the publication you're aiming for. Time for normal journalists, allow at least a month before you poke them again with an email that says, I don't mean to be picky, but I'd really like this piece to be in your magazine or your newspaper, and I wondered if you had a chance to look at it. But give plenty of time. If the editor wants changes, you go with it. He or she is right. The editor, they make the changes based on the style of the organization, the venue, the newspaper, the magazine. So they're making changes that are aligned with their readers, and that's important. So you need to respect that. What is in the newsroom? What does it look like? Okay, this is a huge chart. I know it looks inundating. Don't worry about it. We'll be posting these notes. You can look at this later, but hopefully the big red arrow shows you that you don't have to pay much attention to anything on the right. Those are mainly people you won't deal with, very specialized. Also, if you look at the color-coded key, you'll notice the people above the arrow at the top, the ones in sort of, I guess, orange, and not yellow for sure, orange. Overall supervision and direction. You do not want to send your op-ed pitch to the editor-in-chief. That's a little high up. You want to aim for the editor of the section that you're looking for. If it's a lifestyle piece, that's great. If it's a sports piece, go to the sports editor. City, go to the city editor. If you have a relationship with a reporter, go to one of the reporters at a lower level. The lower the level, the better the chance you have at reaching somebody real. And that's your main goal, reaching somebody real who will connect with you, talk with you, and develop a relationship that is good for both of you. Self-branding. It is PR. It's not fun. Some of it is, but not all of it is fun. Figure out what you want your expertise to be. We all have many areas of expertise, as I've said before. So figure out what you'd like yours to be. Is it going to be human resource development or HRD? Okay, that's good. That's a very broad topic, but it's also narrow enough in scope that you've got publications you can aim for, both academic and non-academic. If you're interested in celebrity culture, you're not going to go to the Academy of Management Journal or Academy of Management newsletter. You're going to go somewhere else. Start your own database. That's going to be really helpful to you as you build your network, something that you can go to quickly and immediately for names, numbers, and contacts. Retweet and support some of the people you want to talk to and you want to be networking with. That gives them kind of a nice little bump and plug. People like that. Don't do too much, but do it a little. Be part of the conversation. Public speaking. That is literally being part of the conversation, just outside of our own heads. Creating communities also helps. Joining communities. CMCS is a community. Beyond the Professoriate is a community. We've joined communities together today to create another community. You can never create or be in enough communities because they're all helpful to you. Developing a portfolio is important. That can look like anything. However, Twitter and LinkedIn, in terms of social media, have become key. Twitter for more immediate things, and LinkedIn really should be your portfolio. You can post things on there. You can put notes. You can put videos. You can put tweets. You can put elements from stories. It should be robust. It should be a go-to source. And then crafting your pitch, the subject line, and when you sent it. That is critical. It's kind of like an attention getter. It's kind of like the hat. If your subject line says, I'm interested in submitting an op-ed, that's not going to get much attention. You are saying, I want something from you. I'm interested in submitting an op-ed. If somebody's doing a story on, say, like what Reader's Digest was doing for New Year's, 2 years ago, why can people not achieve their goals? Okay, I didn't respond with because achieving goals is challenging. I responded with it's cognitive dissonance. That got attention. Maybe a few strange looks from editors, but it also developed their interest to respond to me and develop a conversation. And obviously the timing was good. Allowing 4 weeks before you follow up is important. And then up to a year before you see it in print, because these are evergreen stories. In other words, these aren't tied necessarily or specifically to a specific event. They could be run at any time throughout a 9-month period, which is okay. That's good. You want it to be flexible. That's important. Some final tips, things you might want to look for. You might want to join the organization online, help a reporter out. You can join it for 2 reasons. One, if you're researchers and you need experts, you can put in queries and they come back to you from people purporting to be experts. You'll have to vet them, of course, but at the same time, you can look at the queries from journalists and researchers, and you can respond to them. You don't know what venue it is necessarily. Sometimes it says, but often it says anonymous, especially when it's a larger publication like the Chicago Tribune or the Washington Post. You're not usually going to know that you're talking to those people until they want you to know that. But it's good organization. Another organization that started out as a great one has kind of turned into something that's now expensive for maximum benefit and maybe worth it, maybe not. Something you might want to look at, academia.edu, has a lot of traction on Google. So that's a good thing. Contacting journalists to establish relationships and not solely for the purpose of publishing your op-ed. That's important. A long-term relationship. And let your work evolve naturally. Give it some time. Don't expect your op-ed to be perfect immediately. Remember one thing, CMCS, as part of our conference, we're offering a review of op-eds. I call it a 3-for-1. You get 3 independent reviews. One of them can be by me. If you don't want me to review it, I'm happy not to. No worries there, you won't offend me. But you get 3 reviews for 1 editorial staff fee through CMCS. And maybe that's where you find, hey, I'm developing a relationship. This is good. This is working for both of us. That's important. You can always contact me. I'm always happy to help people. I may not be happy to, for free, edit your dissertation. I have done that once for someone who was kind of besieged upon, and I could see that in social media, put out a query, and lived in India, a place that I really love and that has a special place in my heart. And yeah, I did that. But once I think is good. Maybe not all the time, but you can reach me. You see my email and you see my Twitter hashtag. You won't see my Facebook page because I don't have one. I've managed to stay out of Facebook. Either I've cut my chances of self-branding in half, or I've elevated my credibility and trustworthiness at this point. I don't know. It depends on your perception. But I did publish on LinkedIn 5 new keys to effective writing that are aimed at op-eds that encompass and discuss a little bit about what we've discussed here today. LinkedIn is a good place to publish some things initially just to get some feedback to see what people think. But if you're interested in looking at 5 keys to getting yourself heard, take a look at that page on LinkedIn. We're going to switch, and I'm going to stop sharing that PowerPoint and move to some examples. So I know we went to Jen, but now we're going to go to Adobe Acrobat. And I do not want to compare files. I think I just want to look at the original file. So let me
Yeah, if you click the X
go
on the top
back
right.
to the document, and everybody's seeing what's on the screen. I see a thumbs up from Jen, so to me that is always a good sign, never a bad sign. So this is an initial op-ed that I wrote, and this is after hundreds of edits. A watch for freedom. You can hear the enthusiasm in my voice. It's because this is not a good op-ed, and it wasn't published like this at all. You can recognize Venice's Torre dell'Ochico in St. Mark's Square from the Grand Canal because of its iconic blue face, which displays the hour, day, month, zodiac sign, and moon phase. What you may never be able to tell, though, is the time. Two imposing Moor figures at the top announce each hour by ringing the clock's bell 2 minutes before. Oh, if you can hear the clock, don't know. 2 minutes before and 2 minutes after each hour. Never on the hour. Never has, never will, and all since its gears first began running on February 1st, 1499, after only 4 years under construction. Okay, hopefully you're interested, but hopefully you're also going, so what is a watch for freedom? And we're talking about a clock tower that does a lot of things, but it doesn't tell time. It sort of does. You can read on. We talk about Venice, and we talk about how it was run and how the clock tower was built and what's happening in Venice now and what's happening in the United States at the same time, and the effect of time on people. And here at the end, time has always been civilization's natural enemy and a favored subject in music and poetry. And by now you've lost your attention. You're not reading anymore. Of course not. And you're wondering, a watch for freedom? What are we talking about? Freedom, a watch, time? I have no idea. We haven't even gotten to the part where we're looking and comparing Venice with America and the ways we look at time, which is actually the point, and why we would need to build a watch for time, for freedom, for America, not in Venice, but in America. So this, as you can see, we're on now the 3rd page, and we finally actually see something that looks like a clock with something that says embrace time, and with that your customs, freedoms, livelihood, and culture will survive its passage. Okay, finally we get to something that deals with the idea of a watch for freedom. But again, we're still going. We're on page 4. This is single-spaced. This is long. Even with the pictures, this is long. Now you'll see the published version. This is in Crossbridge, the inaugural edition, April 2016. Publishes research, art, but also commentaries, hence the name Crossbridge. And move past the cover page, go to the commentary. And we still have the same introduction, but no picture. However, the introduction much more condensed. 1 paragraph, that's it. Short paragraph, 2 sentences. That's it. We talk about the clock, but we move quickly to a discussion about why the clock represents the way Venetians have dealt with time differently than the way Americans are dealing with time. And how do we deal with time? Well, most of us, as you can read in the first line under discussion, try to control time. I infuse a recent study. All right, I break a rule. I actually include some research, but those are facts, or at least perspectives deemed to be worthy enough to be considered facts in as much as we can discuss what facts may or may not be. And then you have an interesting, hopefully good question. How has time treated Venice, and how Venetians are treating time is the beginning of a larger question. Have we ceded certain personal and collective freedoms to the latest apps on the latest devices, which threatens how we further perceive time's passage? Now, we've got the nugget of what this whole piece is about. How we deal with time. We are time's addicts. Our addiction has grown. We need to build a watch, not a literal watch, but actually something that we're watching out for a freedom from time. And what do I try to end with? Same thing as something like an attention getter. At the end, I'll read just the last 2 paragraphs. Use a quote from a guide. 2 minutes too early, 2 minutes too late. Either way, it all becomes history, my tour guide reminds us, espousing an attitude that has helped Venetians adapt to a slightly slower pace of life for a people to whom time has always been running out and often been cruel. Not that way in the United States. But after all, isn't a greater freedom from time and inner peace legacies worth watching and fighting for in order to leave them to time immemorial? Something you'd want to think about. Hopefully something that rings in people's minds long after they've read the piece. That's your goal. Some submission instructions, and we'll post these up. Make sure that these notes are available for you too. But here's a pitch letter. And this is from Dr. Samita Nandi. She's the founder and director of the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies, CMCS. And this is from a few years ago. There's no name. You don't have to put names. You can actually send multiple pitch letters to multiple people. But this is about Keira Knightley's latest nude photo shoot that prompts a compelling question. And we get to the question immediately. Is there authenticity in excess of nudity, or is there lack of it through the visibility of its excess? We have our question immediately. The journalist doesn't have to root around through paragraphs figuring out what you're talking about. We have some information about it. Okay, a little bit about what the piece will talk about, what the piece will involve, who might be involved in the piece, what we might be able to offer this magazine, this newspaper, that they wouldn't be able to have themselves. Different people we could interview that we could integrate, and what this piece could add in terms of value to the organization you're trying to get it published in. Finally, a little bit about yourself, showing your credibility. What other than having a doctorate does Samita Nandi do? And that's something you get to craft yourself. She wrote, as the director of the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies and author of Fame in Hollywood North, I have written for, and she lists the people and organizations for which her work has appeared. That adds and shows that you are trustworthy, and it's something that's important. So I think we're okay to now move on to questions. If people, well, I think Jen's taken a look at some questions. I need to, I'm going to unshare my pitch. And again, we'll post these notes and make these available to everybody. So I'm going to simply try to go back to my original screen share. I'm not sure that's the
Josh,
right one.
you
Yeah.
can press stop. If you
Stop
press stop,
share.
there you go.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing some of your experience. So open it up to questions and discussion from the audience. Any questions, please put them in the chat. It's, let me start while we wait for questions and comments to come in. It's really interesting to hear your perspective on this and your experience, because mine's been different.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think there's different ways of going about it, which is one of my takeaways, and it really just depends on your goals. It really very, very much depends on your goals, and yeah. So I'm loving this. Yeah, I shared in the chat. I was approached a few years ago by a journalist who I must have known me from the internet. We weren't connected ahead of time. Can you write an op-ed for us? I did. I don't think I was paid. I might have been. I can't remember. Anyways, it was just shy of 800 words, so that aligns with what you're talking about. But I've definitely seen longer ones. So it's interesting. Yeah, the 200 words really struck me.
That's short.
That's really
very short. That's a little, what is that? That's about 100 more words than an abstract at its longest.
Yeah. And so much, of course, depends. Are you pitching cold, or do you already have a relationship over social media, for example, with a journalist or an editor? So I'll stop talking, Josh. Do you want to comment on any of that?
I'm not sure if we want to go to questions. I think your perspective is fantastic. It's the fact that we're talking about different perspectives that adds more value to everyone. Everyone talking about their experiences helps another person, and that's really our goal in all of this, is to help people get where they want to go.
So why would somebody want to take their research public?
That's a good question. I think it's a great question, and it does depend on what you want to do with your research. I often wonder, because if you publish research in a journal, which a lot of people do and need to do for tenure, and they publish for parish model, at least in the United States, then often the journal holds that copyright. You can't publish that on your blog or your website or put it anywhere else, like on academia. A lot of people use academia and publish on academia, which means their work is for everybody. It's open source, it's free, which is also wonderful. That's certainly establishing yourself as an expert. I would say, though, you want to go for the journal first, maybe. Then if that doesn't work out so well, look at different outlets. Maybe academia is your perfect outlet. Maybe it's not well suited for a journal. Maybe it's a huge, massive research project that you can break into 5 op-eds, 2 journal articles, and a free open source. That's really the goal, is disseminating your expertise, your research, and sharing your knowledge with as many people on as many different platforms as possible.
Yeah. There's a question here. It's just asking you to share the LinkedIn. So we can send that round later. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, no problem. So here's a question. If you are pitching a publication that doesn't have an organizational chart identifying different editorial staff members, who is the best person to send a query to?
First, you want to know who's at the organization. So you go on their website. That's what I would do. And go into the about and contact us. I'm not suggesting that you fill out the contact us form on the website if there is one. That's not a good idea. That's really for people interested in buying something or contacting the organization for what the organization is for. But what I would do is find a few key names. Finding email addresses can be tricky, but at the same time with social media, that can be very easy. You see the name on the website. You go to LinkedIn, often you'll see an actual email address that's not on the website. That's very helpful. You use that email address. And your opening line should not be, I'm really interested in doing, yes, I can see your face, I'm really interested in, no, your opening line should be, I really enjoyed what you had to say about XYZ, whatever was most recent. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you're looking to publish in that publication, then you do enjoy their work. So pick something, pick the person, find the email address, not the general one. Now, some of them can be general that are actually personal. In very small organizations, a lot of the info at really goes to the one person at the organization who runs it. So don't be dissuaded entirely if you only find info at, but often on social media, you'll find an extra at Gmail, at Hotmail, at Yahoo. That's the way in.
Yeah, and yeah, because I hear this from other people, I think there's a lot of hesitation from folks who haven't done this before to reach out. But the truth is, in publishing, is they need authors. Publishers need authors. Editors need writers, and they want you to pitch them.
They need content. The bottom line is every staff in every organization is working all the time on social media, on their stories, on trying to produce content in as many different places as possible. Yes, they need your help. They may have 50 people on their team, but if they have 50 people on their team, they're probably, oriented toward an audience of maybe 10,000. Well, that requires constant content. Yeah, they need you just as much as you need them. Remember that.
They need you more. Yeah. What's something you think would surprise graduate students, academics, about writing for the public and op-eds in specific? What might surprise them about this?
I think the most surprising and the most challenging thing is nobody in journalism or really outside of academia cares if you have a PhD. In fact, in a lot of rooms, if you say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm Dr. So-and-so, that immediately ends the conversation in their minds. They don't care unless it starts the conversation of, oh, you're a doctor. What are you a doctor of? Because I have this problem in my hip. Yeah, that not the kind of response you want. And so a lot of practitioners, no, they don't care whether you have a doctorate, and they don't care whether you know very large words and whether you know how to build theories or whether you've dissected a theory. They don't care about that. They do care that you're able to talk to people on their level. You're able to translate highly complex ideas, and you're able to say, this is what it's like. You're able to say something like the jet stream, which is really hard to understand. I mean, we know it's strong winds in the upper atmosphere, but what does it really do? Well, okay, my analogy always was it's like a steering wheel that steers all the storms throughout the world. If it's up high over the Arctic, that's where the storms go. If it's down low over the south part of the United States, guess what? Texas is getting more rain. It's not happening right now. I'm making this up. Hopefully, Texas is not getting more rain at this moment. But jet stream, the analogy, that is helpful. And in academic, that's where we shine. We can break down something complex and we can make it understandable.
One thing you talked about was that a lot of op-eds might be evergreen content. So it doesn't have to be published today. It would still be pretty much still as good a year from now. And I totally hear, you on that. I've definitely seen academic researchers jump on the chance, and maybe this is a tip for people, jump on the chance when something is in the news that relates to your research. Now's your chance. You want to pitch it now. And in that case, it's different, right? You want to act quickly. There's a fast turnaround, right? Yeah. Josh, comments on that?
Absolutely. That's when you're looking, say, at Twitter and you see a breaking news story that's within your area of expertise. Then no, you don't go, oh, well, it's breaking news. Well, depending on the level, if it's, say, 9/11, everybody's in mass hysteria in the United States, not a good time to try to contact anyone. But if it is an event that's discrete and not mass terrorism, then yes, go immediately. That's the time. Strike. But you'd need to have your op-ed and your pitch crafted, because you can't just go, oh, well, I know this topic. I'm going to write my op-ed right now, and then I'll send it to them later today. That doesn't tend to work as well, simply because the editing may get lost. And it's really important in the beginning to edit. If you've been publishing for a while, then you might be in the rhythm and you can do something like that. You know what you're capable of and what you're not. You're the best judge. That's really the best guide. Not me, not Jen. You.
Definitely
in your
me.
Head.
Definitely me, Josh. One of my friends, my colleague, Royal Historian, he's at Royal Historian on Twitter. And I always know when there's a royal visit coming to Canada or there's a new baby coming, because she's busy. She's on the radio and she's on TV and she's writing in the news. She gets really, really busy and she gets paid for this stuff. And, a contact of mine on LinkedIn, she's been doing tons of media appearances and tons of writing because she's an expert on North Korea. So, there are opportunities for academics for sure.
Oh, and there's no question. In the United States, I would say we have what many would call celebrity academics. They're on the television all the time. Yes, they're a doctor. They're commenting on the election and they're commenting on the presidency. But at least with some of the contacts that I have that have gotten a little huge, larger than life, they've also found some scandal and problems balancing everything. So, again, listen to the voice inside your head.
There's a question, and of course the answer is going to be, it depends. But what's a good rule of thumb in terms of timing between pitches? How long should you wait when you don't get a response?
I would say it does depend on the piece. If it's something that's going on right now, you don't want to wait 4 weeks before responding. In fact, you want to send out multiple pitches. Here's the thing. A lot of journals, in academia, they don't want you sending your journal article to multiple journals. They don't want that. Newspapers, magazines, they don't care. They're not asking, but of course, so send them to 5 or 6. Make sure that you're not sending, them to the best friend of somebody at the competing organization or newspaper. That's never the best idea, to send the exact same thing to 2 people who are best friends. And that happens in news. You actually have best friends. You actually have people who are married at the same station in television. That happens, just the way things work. 2 people get an identical letter, an identical pitch, an identical op-ed. They may downgrade your credibility, but that's unlikely to happen. Send it widely in terms of breaking news. When it comes to how long should you wait on an evergreen, say, it could be run anytime in the next 9 months. Wait about 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how busy, based on looking at social media, this person is. If you don't see this person publishing or writing anything, this person could be on vacation. Look for signs of that. If you see that this person is active but not that active, probably a great time to strike, critical time to strike, because they're looking for something.
What would you say the value is for somebody in and around the academic world publishing writing outside of the academic world? What's valuable about that for that person?
I would say it goes to one thing: purpose. What is your purpose? Are you going for tenure track teaching jobs? If you're doing that, publishing op-eds is probably not the best use of your time. You probably need to be focusing on what gets you tenure. But at the same time, it is good to be known as an expert in your field by journalists. That's a helpful added element of credibility that widens your ability to disseminate your research, your expertise, and what you want to add to the world's collective consciousness and conversation. So it really goes to, what is your goal? What is your purpose?
Yeah, awesome. And, it just occurred to me, there are for sure professors, postdocs, graduate students who are publishing op-eds, and in big venues. So don't necessarily be turned away thinking that you're not there yet. You are there yet. Josh, what advice would you give folks who want to practice their writing? Maybe they're closer to your first version of that piece, so they want to practice writing for the public, or writing in a less academic way. What advice?
I think, honestly, I think LinkedIn is great. It's a publishing platform. It became one in 2014. Wasn't before then. Now it's grown to be a massive publishing platform in that people are publishing not just once a week. It was every now and again. Then it was once a week. Then people were publishing twice a week, making sure they had an editorial schedule so that you knew what to expect when Tuesday came along. You knew that this person was going to put out something and you were looking forward to that. Start trying that. That does force you to write on a schedule. All right, I'm going to put something there on Tuesday and I'm going to put something there on Saturday. Those are good days spaced out. Weekend days are always good days. Will you become a star on LinkedIn? Is that made for you to put the book that you've written that you're just waiting for a publisher to grab or an agent to look at, or a piece that you really want somebody to pick up? Is that the place to put it? And a lot of people did that on LinkedIn in 2014. You'd have people putting a book on there, and then you'd have their own comments below on LinkedIn, and it would say, why did 12 people read my book? I worked on this so hard. I worked on this for such a long time, and 12 people read it. My own family didn't even read it. 12 people read it. That's fewer people than in my extended family. And they were very distressed. Well, the problem was LinkedIn is not the venue for that. It's not the venue to publish something you're hoping an agent will pick up because you've just published it. Why would anybody publish what you've published on social media already? But testing the waters, getting comments, building the network, maybe you've been quoted once and you're trying to get quoted again. Publishing on LinkedIn, developing a relationship with the people who have published you once, that reinforces your trustworthiness, your credibility, and the fact that you can continue to produce quality writing, quality material.
On deadline, and depending, on the topic, quickly.
Yes. And that is good. Eventually, you won't be editing 100 times. Eventually, you get to the point where you're editing as you go along, and then you do a few final edits. But you do want to make sure you're good at editing, not just that you're going, oh yeah, I know this. I'm pretty good at editing. I can whip this out.
This is a side note, but if you're the type of person that writes long tweet rants or Twitter threads, or you write big comments on Facebook, I sometimes those comments could turn into op-eds. Maybe not, for the New York Times or for other publications, right? Absolutely.
That is a great point. And I want to say, for example, I met Samita Nandi through a LinkedIn comment in a subgroup 3 years ago. That's how we first met. I posted a comment within a group in LinkedIn about an article, and we started connecting based on that one comment. That is critical. Making comments, those are a contribution. That's important.
Awesome. We're just at time, Josh. I know we started a couple minutes late. Final thoughts.
Do it. If you're interested in it, do it. Go ahead. The worst thing that could happen is you publish something, you put it on LinkedIn, and a few people look at it, and that's it. That's the worst thing that can happen. Now, the worst thing that can happen if you send a great op-ed to the Washington Post, you don't get a response. Well, gee, that's just going to kill you. That's really not the worst thing that can happen. Maybe the best thing that can happen, because maybe you find that the Atlantic is your home and not a mainstream newspaper.
Awesome. So I was really pleased to be asked to host this. So thank you so much to the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies, to Samita Nandi, my friend, Josh. Thank you.
Yes.
It's great to work with you on this. And
thank you.
Yeah, Josh, turn it over to you to end us.
I just say, write. Research, and remember that practitioners really don't care if you have the doctorate. We all are into it when we're into it, but at the same time, remember that you're a person outside of that one area of research that we love so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. So again, this webinar was presented by the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies and presented actually by Josh Nathan, who joined us from Denver, right? Denver, just outside Denver, I believe. Yeah, and I'm Jen. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.